and welcome to the video. Today we're talking about this phone right here. This is the Nothing Phone 2. It's a really interesting smartphone. Now, we never got a chance to actually review the Nothing Phone 1 because that device was a little bit harder to get here in the States. But with the launch of the Phone 2, this is readily available here in the United States. So we had it, we're testing it, and there's some good stuff to talk about here. So let's get into it. Now, when you take a look at the history of a company like Nothing, which is a relatively short history, by the way, they've only been around for a couple of years, they seem to be the type of company that they base their product philosophy around building something that is beautiful to look at, is well built in terms of quality, has a decent premium feature set to it, and is also decently affordable. And you can see all of that in their first product, the Nothing Ear 1, that launched I think July of 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And those headphones really put Nothing on the map for a couple of reasons. One, the design was incredibly polarizing. Nothing did try to achieve transparent headphones, and while those weren't fully transparent, they were close enough and they looked really good and they felt really good in the hand as well. And the second reason was those headphones just had so much hype backed behind them whenever they released that there was really no choice but Nothing ending up on the map and on everyone's radars. So a year later, they dropped the Phone 1, which stuck true to their design philosophy. It was a really nice looking phone, and it was obviously the first attempt at a smartphone. There was no official release here in the United States, so we only have limited experience with that phone, but it looked really, really cool. Now fast forward to 2023, and we have the Nothing Phone 2, which again tries to achieve that really nice balance of something that is beautiful to look at, is well built and you can feel it as soon as you hold it, has a decent set of premium features, and is attempting to be relatively well priced. But at the end of the day, that's what we're here to find out. So let's get into the details. And with design being such an important aspect of the product philosophy at Nothing, I think they did a really good job designing this phone. It's super sharp, it's fun to look at, and whenever you hold it, it actually feels really nice in the hand too. And they didn't do anything special here, right? Glass on the front and back, and they used aluminum for the enclosure. But the glass on the back is transparent, and that allows them to show off an interface that they call the glyph. And now the glyph is a set or series of LED lights on the back of the phone that are intended to provide you with some functionality. So you can customize them to light up in certain ways whenever someone calls you or texts you or a specific app sends the phone a notification. There are other ways to use it as well, like in a countdown perspective, if you were to set a timer, or let's say you order something from Uber or a food delivery service. Or what I've also seen and I really like is certain ways that you interact with the phone. Like when you go volume up and down, the lights go up and down. Or whenever you plug the phone into charge, there's a bar that lights up progressively as the phone picks up charge. And I think most people are probably going to fall into a camp of this is either a gimmick and I'm probably not going to use it, or some people are going to think to themselves this is amazing and the type of forward step that smartphones needed besides going into the direction of folding the screen in half, right? And I think I fall somewhere in between. I found the glyph interface to be really, really cool, but at the same time, I can see how some people might think it would be more of a party trick. And Nothing has even made some solid improvements on the display front as well, no pun intended with that. But it is a 6.7-inch LTPO OLED display that is flat, thank goodness, so much better whenever you're actually using the phone. And in terms of improvements, I mentioned LTPO, that was not present on Phone 1, and that's going to allow this phone to have a variable refresh rate setting, which is nice to see. The display size has been bumped up from 6.5-ish to about 6.7, so you do have some more screen real estate. And maximum brightness has also been taken up quite a bit as well, which is going to make the phone so much better for things like outdoor visibility in direct sunlight. Now, I will say, from a resolution perspective, you're looking at a 1080p display, but I mean, let's be honest, 1080p displays have been so good for quite some time now. I have had no issues with the 1080p display on this smartphone, and even certain flagship phones, like you look at an S23 Ultra. I feel like the majority of the folks probably set that phone to a 1080p resolution. When you take it out of the box, it's by default set to 1080p. So oftentimes, you're not even going to be able to tell, and this display quality is super, super nice. There's also an optical fingerprint reader. I will say that might be my only gripe with the display on this phone, that the optical fingerprint reader is so far down on the display. I would love to see them bump it up maybe like a quarter to where we see a lot of other phones that use optical fingerprint readers. But outside of that, great display. And the phone comes running what Nothing is calling, hilariously enough, Nothing OS version 2.0 based on Android 13. And I gotta say, from a software experience, I actually really like what Nothing has going on here. I think it's very clean. I think it's very minimal. I think it's very simplistic. They even have that classic, if you take a look at their website, they use like this dot font for all of their like, you know, UI elements and stuff like that. And that's present like everywhere you look on this phone as well. I think it looks really nice. And I'm pretty sure I saw something in the news recently talking about how Nothing was seeking more investor funding in order to try to create their own ecosystem, which I think would be awesome to see. I think they've done a great job with the ear and the phone so far. But my first thought whenever I read that news was, is Nothing going to continue utilizing Android as their operating system, or would the end goal to be to develop your own operating system? Because from what I'm seeing in terms of how they've modified their own, you know, skin of Android on this phone, I actually really like it. So I'd be curious to see what a full-blown, full steam ahead development team at Nothing would be able to actually develop for their own in-house smartphones. I think that would be really, really cool. But, you know, taking a few steps back to the operating system, I think it looks really great. And I think Nothing has done a great job of using a lot of like monochromatic colors to really try to, I think, balance the amount of time you're using your smartphone. When I get into the Nothing phone, everything looks the same. Everything's relatively monochromatic looking, and that's on purpose. I think the idea is you get in, you use what you need to use your phone for, and then you get out. You're not distracted by a ton of other colored apps, the, you know, purplish Instagram app, the purple Discord app, the blue Twitter app, or X, or whatever we're calling that app now. But you get what I'm saying. Everything is pretty uniform, and I think it's designed to get you in and out of your smartphone. And so far, I've really enjoyed the software experience on this phone. And everything on the Nothing Phone 2 is powered by the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chip and a 4700 milliamp hour battery. And of course, you know, I have thoughts on both. So let's start with the chipset. I actually think the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 was a good call, right? So you're not going to get the latest flagship processing chip, right? The Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. But I do think that going with, let's say, the Q3 or Q4 of 2022's top of the line processor is going to save you some cost, because now everyone's buying the latest and greatest processor, which makes the slightly, just a few months older processor cheaper to get, right? So good processor. I had absolutely no issues with performance on this device. My particular unit also has 12 gigs of RAM, so everything has been smooth. It's been fantastic in terms of performance. So I think Nothing made a good call here. And in terms of 4700 milliamp hours, it lasted me plenty. Like in terms of even moderate to somewhat heavy usage throughout the day, I got through just fine. I mean, I think so far on like my heaviest use day with the phone, I got somewhere with like 8 to 9 hours of screen on time. The phone hadn't been charged in a little over 24 hours, and I still had 33% battery life left. And there is 45 watt wire charging here as well. So whenever you do plug it in, as long as you have a fast charging brick, it'll top off pretty quick too. And of course, with any smartphone, you're going to ask yourself how good the cameras are. So on the Nothing Phone 2, we have two lenses on the back, a 50 megapixel wide angle and a 50 megapixel ultra wide angle. Now, the wide angle has been upgraded in terms of the lens itself compared to the Phone 1. And as far as the selfie camera on the front, you're actually looking at double the pixel count, up from 16 to 32 for some sharper selfies if that's your thing. But as far as the cameras on the back go, I would say they're probably going to be the weakest aspect of the phone. I think if you have optimal lighting conditions, you're still more than capable of getting a great photo, whether you're using the wide angle or whether you're using the ultra wide angle. I think the ultra wide also does a really good job of not getting too distorted around the edges and keeping detail in the pictures and stuff like that. Low light situations is where things might start to get a little questionable. This is most definitely, like I said, I would say the area of the phone that has the most room for opportunity whenever it comes time for the Phone 3. So again, if you're in solid lighting conditions, I think you'll get some decent photos. Questionable in low light. Overall, I think there's solid room to be improved next year. But that's about it. That is the Nothing Phone 2. I really enjoyed my experience with the Phone 2. I've mentioned this several times on the channel. I have a primary SIM in my iPhone, and then I have a secondary SIM that I use for testing, right? My SIM is in the Nothing Phone 2, and I don't foresee it coming out for the foreseeable future. Maybe when like the Pixel 8 Pro comes out, then it'll jump out to those smartphones. But let's talk about pricing, because the Nothing Phone 2 is in a very, very interesting price point. So there are 3 variations available on the Nothing website: 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. Then you can bump up to 12 gigs of RAM and 256, or 12 gigs of RAM and 512. That initial configuration starts at $599, which I think is actually a pretty decent price if you feel like you can get away with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. Once you start bumping up to 12, 256, you add on $100, so $699. 12 and 512, another $100, $799. At that $700 to $800 price range, I mean, you're in direct competition with phones like the Pixel 7, fantastic camera, the OnePlus 11, fantastic all-arounder, the Samsung Galaxy S23, basically a flagship phone. So I mean, at those price points, it might start to get a little dicey. You definitely have to find some utility or something that is drawing you to the Nothing Phone specifically. But I think at that $599 price point, that's pretty ideal. But overall, I really did enjoy my time with the Nothing Phone 2. And if you enjoyed this review, I would really appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe button down below. Let me know what you think in the comment section as always. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.